Hello everybody, welcome to Pod Hacks Presents. I am your host, Justin Reyes, and if you follow the podcast version of Pod Hacks, you will know that I already did an episode on Roberto Enrique Clemente Walker. In fact, I did 2 of them, but with new equipment. As you can see, I got a new soundboard, all of that. The sound should be pretty crisp right about now. I decided to revamp that series of the biopics and various topics dealing with the game of baseball, spring training, safety, all that good stuff, especially now that we're in a lockout and there's not a lot of news going on with baseball. If you want to follow Pod Hacks, if you're listening to this on YouTube, and you want to see the podcast version, which will have a lot of episodes like this, but we'll also have episodes where I talk about the game of baseball with my friend Yoni and my brother Jordan, then visit justareyes.com, where you can find all things Just a Race Media, including my show, How Do We Get Here podcast, with my other brother, Brandon. If you're listening to this on the podcast version, if you want to see my beautiful face and maybe some videos and some pictures as we go along through this Roberto Enrique Clemente story, then go to justareyes.com and you can find all things Just a Reyes Media. If you want to follow me on Instagram at Just a Reyes, or you can go to TikTok at How Did We Pod for the time being, although that may change. Or you can follow me on Twitter, where all of them, or most of, my baseball thoughts come out, at PodHacksMLB on Twitter. Now, this is going to be a little bit rough because it's my first time doing both of them together, at least in a long time, and I'm going to get used to it, but we're going to learn this together and we're going to get through it. I have better equipment now, so I feel more comfortable about getting through it. And I'm glad you guys are here for the show. Remember to like and subscribe. Give it a big thumbs up. That's the like part. That's the subscribe part. Or you can hit that bell notification. Boop. That gives you notifications whenever a new episode comes out. And as you can see, this will be coming out in parts. I don't want to make these episodes overly long because they are on YouTube. And I don't want to make super long YouTube episodes. It also becomes very difficult to edit that much of a story. So if I can keep these episodes in parts, and I can tell more of a story, and I can also get them edited and out to you guys a lot quicker. Now I may record them at once for some of them, and then just cut it in pieces and then release it that way. But for this one, I will be releasing it a quick part, the introduction into the Clemente Walker story, and then we will go into his career. And then, or the early part of his career anyways, and then we'll go on from there. I don't know where exactly I'm going to cut it off at, so we're going to learn this together. As I mentioned, it's going to be a little rough for the first few episodes, but we're diving back into this. I love video creating and editing. I love the podcasting side of things. So if I can get both of them going in a little bit more consistent fashion, I feel pretty good about it. Leave some comments. Let me know what you guys think. You guys can always email me, info@justareyes.com, and give me tips, tricks if you want to. Give me recommendations that you guys want to see me research and get into, or just tell me what you think overall. Whether you like it, don't like it, doesn't matter. Let me hear it. If you're listening to this on the podcast form, remember to go to Apple Podcasts and leave a written review. 5 stars. This guy's great. Knows what he's talking about. He's the best in the business. That'd be great. If you're listening to this podcast version, let's get into the ads. If you're listening to this on YouTube, let's dive into the story. I was born to play baseball. That is a direct quote from Roberto Enrique Clemente Walker, and it stands true. It's said by not just Roberto himself, but by everyone that knew him. He loved the game of baseball. He enjoyed it so much that it was who he wanted to be, whether his parents wanted him to go down that route or not. That is what Roberto Enrique Clemente Walker wanted for himself. He was born August 18th, 1934 in Barrio San Antonio, Cartagena, Puerto Rico. His mother, a laundress named Luisa Walker. His father, a sugarcane plantation foreman named Melchor Clemente. But his father, Melchor, was much more than just a sugarcane plantation worker. Roberto was the 5th of 5 children. Again, crazy. Luisa had 4 children that she had before she met Melchor. They met a little bit later in life. Matino, Andres, Akito, and an unnamed sister who died a horrific death at the age of 5. A lot of tragedy for the Walker family as they move forward. That the young child, it's a tough one if you want to look it up. It's a tough one to think of a 5-year-old going through that. Luisa's first husband would pass, leaving her a widow before she met and married Melchor. And Melchor was 54 when Roberto was married again. Later in life, they're having these kids, lots of kids. Too many for me. Too many for me. But Roberto being the 5th of this group means that, good things can happen in 5s, I guess, if you get through the first few. Lacho was a foreman on a sugarcane plantation. He would also use his truck to help local construction companies to transport gravel and sand to various sites in order to make a little bit extra cash. The brothers and Roberto himself would also pitch in doing this by shoveling said gravel and sand wherever they needed it. It is all in an effort to help make the family stay afloat. A lot of people, a lot of mouths to feed. Lacho would make a salary of 45 cents a day for his work on the plantation, which was barely enough to care for the large family at home. 45 cents a day. If you're curious, the average daily salary in Puerto Rico in the 1930s and 40s was around 30 cents a day. So they were making more than average in Puerto Rico. Crazy. 30 cents a day? I mean, inflation is what it is, but 30 cents a day. Roberto would oftentimes help his father shovel dirt into trucks, as I mentioned, and help them shovel it out, along with the rest of his brothers, teach him some work ethic at a young age. Also, probably would help make him so lean and strong as he grew up, as you'll know that people saw him and you thought right away that this guy was a crazy athlete. Like, he looked the part. He looked strong and he was fast. Roberto Clemente would grow up with a great admiration and love for both of his parents, despite the great disparity in age. Right, Melchor was 54 when he was born. His mother Luisa was close to that age, so there was a huge gap. But he adored them, and they adored him in return. He was extremely close with them, and would often credit both of them for making him into the man that he would become. Clemente would often remark that he got his powerful arm from his mother, and even though she worked more often than not, she would help Roberto grow his love for the game, even though both parents really, really wanted him to go to engineering school. As I mentioned, baseball wasn't really necessarily the path that they envisioned for him. They're hoping he'd go to engineering school at the time, and even now that engineering was seen as a honorable career path and job to have. And Roberto just he if baseball didn't pan out, he probably would have done that, but he wanted to give baseball a shot. That was his one true love, and he wanted to really pursue that as opposed to what his parents were hoping. And even though his parents didn't necessarily want baseball for him because they knew how tough it would be, it wasn't seen as a highly respectable profession as it is today. Engineering was. They still respected his decision and his drive to do so, and they helped him pursue his dream. In high school, Roberto was a stud in high jump and javelin. Many thought he would make an Olympic run in javelin. However, his love for baseball was too strong. So he was really good in a lot of sports, which makes sense because he was known as being a freak athlete for baseball and for most sports. So seeing him excel in other sports should not come as a surprise to anybody, especially his strong arm and the javelin throw kind of go hand in hand. Again, but his love of baseball was just too strong for everything. Like, it was from the beginning. It's what he wanted to do. As a child, he would spend all day playing, often forgetting to stop for lunch or anything else. It was baseball or nothing all day. Think about the kids from the Sandlot that just wanted to play all day long. That was Roberto and his friends. Roberto and his parents would accept that he was, again, born to play baseball and stop making him pursue engineering and other endeavors as that. Still making him go to school, but baseball, they just supported it. That's what he wanted. Clemente and his friends would have to make their own equipment in order to play baseball. They would use baseballs when possible, but that wasn't always the case. There wasn't a lot of them being made, and you couldn't just buy like a bucket of rubber ones from Walmart for a cheap price like you can now. So they would, if they came across them, great. If not, they would have to improvise. And improvising, they would use a tennis ball. That would work if it was available. Again, not as often available as they'd like. An old magazine or newspaper crinkled up in the shape of a ball and then covered in a sock was probably used more likely than not. And if they can't get a magazine or newspaper, they would just roll the sock as tight as they can and use that as a baseball. So whatever they could to play the game, that's what they would do. Tree branches were often used as bats. In fact, probably hard to find anything else besides a tree branch. But they probably weren't great as far as their shape and use to find the perfect branch to play the game. So tree branches, just if you have a love of the game, you'll figure out ways to play it, and that's what Roberto Clemente and his buddies did. Roberto had an amazing work ethic at a young age, and this story really is one that stands out to me. During his childhood, Roberto would carry a large milk can a mile from a country store to his neighbor's house in return for a single penny. He did this for 3 years before he was finally able to buy the bicycle and that he had been coveting the whole time. 3 years, every day, a mile for a penny. That determination. I mean, he wanted to become something. He wanted to do something. He wanted something. And again, seeing who he becomes as a man and a professional and a human being later in life, that grit and determination should surprise nobody as we move forward. I could imagine walking every single day with a gallon of milk, a mile for 1 penny. For 3 years, having to hold on to a dream, penny a day for 3 years. Makes you really think about how badly you want to be successful at something. Because Roberto Clemente, he wanted to be successful pretty bad. We're going to pivot the story a little bit here in part 1 and talk about a fella named Monte Irvin who is worth knowing as well. So you guys are getting 2 stories, Roberto Clemente, Monte Irvin. Monte Irvin's going to be a little bit more abbreviated, but he is a big part of Roberto Clemente in his love of the game. And then we'll get out of this episode and we'll go to part 2. We'll dive into Roberto Clemente becoming a professional ball player. So who is Monte Irvin? Well, Montford Merrill Irving, it's a great name, born February 25th, 1919 in Haleburg, Alabama, the 8th of 13 children. They love to have kids. His parents love to have kids. Born to Cupid Alexander Irving, and Cupid for sure, and Mary Eliza Henderson Irving. His father was a sharecropper, felt it was too dangerous in the South for his family, and when Monte was younger, the family moved north to New Jersey. As you can imagine, Alabama at the time, not the greatest for African-American, especially African-American ball players such as Monte Irvin. Irvin was an athlete that excelled in sports well beyond the diamond in high school, similar to Clemente. One of those sports being the javelin throw, again, similar to Clemente. He was also a gifted football player, among other things. Like, he was just a gifted athlete. Regardless of the accomplishments, however, he just could not shake his love for the game of baseball. Like, just like Clemente, they may have been good in whatever they wanted to be good at. Baseball was their driving force and what they really wanted to excel in. While still in high school, Irving signed with the Newark Eagles of the Negro Leagues, which is crazy to think about. Like, this guy was playing professionally while in high school, and people didn't notice. Because he was in high school, he needed to maintain his amateur status. So like many before him, he used an alias, this one being Jimmy Nelson. So this would be similar to Kumar Rocker. That's what I used in the podcast version originally, who just got finished playing at Vanderbilt, also playing for the Kansas City Royals. Playing for the Royals and playing in high school and being recruited for college and just using a different name, and just people don't notice. Which I guess can happen whenever you live in an era where they don't have social media and people can't see your picture and your likeness at all times. There's not as much TV, but it's still crazy to think about. Like, this guy was excelling from a very, very young age in the game of baseball. Because of this, he played not in just in high school, but also in college during his professional career. So like I mentioned, it'd be like Kumar Rocker playing in high school and in college at Vanderbilt, all while playing professionally for like the Kansas City Royals. In 1946, Irving teamed up with another Hall of Famer in Larry Doby in creating one of the best middle infields in history as Eagles won the Negro League World Series that year in 1946. Irving at short and Doby at second. Larry Doby would be the one to break the color line on the American League side with the Cleveland Indians. I talk about it in an episode when I talk about Satchel Paige, but I will revamp as well. With the new equipment and with the new sound and video audio and everything. In 1942, so 4 years prior to winning that World Series with Larry Doby, Irvin would join many Negro League stars in joining Jorge Pascal's Mexican Baseball League. Pascal offered more money and Irvin jumped. I really want to dive into an episode about Jorge Pascal's Mexican Baseball League. It is fascinating, but for now, we're talking about Irvin. Irvin loved his time in Mexico and was a star among stars. Like, some of the best from the Negro Leagues and beyond, Major League Baseball as well, went to play in this league. And Monte Irvin was better than all of them. He really was like one of the best players to ever play the game, and he just doesn't get talked about enough. In 1946, again, he returned to the Eagles with Doby, as I mentioned. And that year, when they won the World Series, it was in beating Satchel Paige and the Kansas City Monarchs in a 7-game series. Integration would begin that offseason with Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, as well as Larry Doby a short time later breaking the color barrier on the American League side, as mentioned before. Many of the Negro Leagues believe that Irving should have been picked by Branch over Robinson, as Irving was the best player in the Negro Leagues. Like, the best of the best was Monte Irvin. But again, if you know the Jackie Robinson story, you understand that Branch wasn't looking for the best of the best. He was looking for the person that would best personify the guy that he was looking for. And Jackie Robinson fit it, although Monte Irvin was the best ball player there was. July 8th, 1949, Irvin and Hank Thompson reported to the New York Giants. Irvin at this time was 30. He remarked, "This should have happened to me 10 years ago. I'm not half the player I was then." Now you see a lot of guys coming into their prime at 30 nowadays. It didn't happen as much at that time. We didn't have the knowledge of the body and the technology and nutrition, all those things to help people to continue to develop and get better as they move towards 30. So people would begin to slow down their careers around the age of 30 at this time, as opposed to nowadays when guys are getting to the 30s and they're feeling better than they ever have. Many, including the great Roy Campanella, agreed that Monte Irvin, more than anyone, was probably robbed of the color lines and being integrated into Major League Baseball late. In 1951, at the age of 32, Irvin had his best season as a big leaguer. He hit .312. He had 24 home runs, he had 121 RBIs, and he finished third in the MVP vote behind Campanella and Stan the Man Musial, two greats right there with Monte Irvin at age 32. Irvin accomplished many great things in his career, even if a lot of it was robbed due again to the ignorance of racism and the struggle of the black ball players as they tried to prove their worth, even though they were better than most of their contemporaries. He hit .293 in his career, 99 home runs, 443 RBIs, 858 OPS, a 125 OPS plus in 7 years, and he was an all-star in 1952, the year after he finished third in the MVP vote. On July 11th, 2016, Irvin died in Houston a month before his 97th birthday, living a good long life. During his Major League career, Irvin would spend his winters in Puerto Rico playing for the San Juan Senadores. During his time in Puerto Rico, he inspired a young Clemente as he met Clemente and some of his friends on the field that were willing to carry their bags. So they'd show up to the field in San Juan, Clemente and his friends. If they were willing to carry Irvin as well as other players' bags as they walked in, then he would let them go all the way into the field to see the fields that they were playing on, which I imagine were much grander than the lots that they were playing on normally, these young kids. Later, the Dodgers would send a scout, Al Campanis, to scout for talent in Puerto Rico because of guys like Irvin and others that would go down to Puerto Rico to play. While doing this, they discovered Roberto Clemente. Monte Irvin, being the best of the best, obviously was who Clemente was drawn to. He's obviously one of the huge reasons that the Dodgers and others teams started to send players down. So without Monte Irvin, who knows if Clemente was given his chance when he was given it. It may have to come later. He may have had to fight for it later in his life. As you'll see, he dealt with a lot of racism also in his career. Again, a lot of this had to do with Monte Irvin and the talent that they had there and the inspiration it gave to Roberto Clemente Walker and to other young Puerto Rican-born players who would join Clemente in the major leagues and really open up the landscape for Latin American players throughout the world, and as we see them in Major League Baseball now today. Monte Irvin, Roberto Clemente Walker, both of them very much well-deserving of being known by baseball fans across the world. That's why I wanted to put Roberto Clemente and Monte Irvin in this episode. The next episode, I will talk about Roberto Clemente being signed by Al Campanis and the Dodgers and how he became a Pittsburgh Pirate. I will also talk about his early years of his career before we shift to his years as the Clemente Walker that we know him as the world champion, as the hero and philanthropist, and just the amazing man that Roberto Clemente ended up being. That's all for me in this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, this is me just trying to dip my toes into this and figure things out. I'm going to continue to do this. I really do enjoy diving into stories like this because I know the name Roberto Clemente and I've heard the stories, but I don't know all of the stories and I don't know all of what's going on with him. Same with Satchel Paige. It's so fascinating for me to dive into all the information, to learn about these individuals who are held in such high regard in the game of baseball. Hopefully one day the number 21 will be retired in Major League Baseball. Same with the number 42 of Jackie Robinson. Appreciate all the help. Remember again, like, subscribe, bell notifications. Go and leave me comments. Go to send me emails. All of it. I want to hear all the feedback, good, bad, and different. Thank you guys for listening, and I can't wait to talk to you guys again real soon.